comprehending unconditional love. So this is going to be a really nice video for everyone who probably has some aspect or some interconnected knowledge of what they feel or what they believe is unconditional love, which is perfect because everyone's connection to it will be unique, as it's the manifestation of one's journey through this experience and through this frequency of which we ultimately get to feel and connect. So although what I'm about to do is I'm going to explain more so the meanings of activation and the meanings of connection, everyone's experience with unconditional love is unique, as it's a field of understanding and perception, and which represents unconditional love. So first of all, let's just start off with acknowledging activation. So unconditional love is a choice. Literally, it's a choice. And this reality that we're living in, it definitely tries to manipulate our choice to love unconditionally by representing justice within a negative version. So the justice of which we're living, or the justice which we're experiencing, which we feel that we're serving, is only the representation of deceit. So a lot of the time, like, we feel that we shouldn't love someone unconditionally, or it's not love someone unconditionally, because this will wrap into this, but we feel that we shouldn't love someone without conditions. So this love with conditions is effectively representing an aspect of ourselves which are creating ultimately like a deceit on something. Unconditional love doesn't need to be human form, it can be anything. But we feel that if this existence isn't giving us what we want, then we shouldn't love. And this is ultimately the manipulation of I would say more so our psyche, our minds, our paradigm, that when we feel that we shouldn't love something unconditionally, or we feel that we should love something with condition, we're ultimately being programmed within deceit. And the reason why this is happening is because we must take it back another level and look at our reality as an existence of ultimately mass manipulation. This existence is existing from literally compromising people from activating to a higher space or a higher realm of comprehensive understanding of life itself. Because if everyone is in this frame of deeper awareness or deeper acknowledgement to the meaning of life, and not necessarily the meaning of life, but the truth behind this reality, there would be no control. If you look at the reality of this world, we're very much living under literally like a co-op of manipulation. There's so many layers and structures of this manipulation. Effectively, then there is the human species, or the human body, and the human mind is massively manipulated to control the potential of oneself. And that's why when we start to look at unconditional love, it starts to get very dangerous, because once we start to activate the unconditional love, our awareness changes and we stop looking at the world within a scope of potential, because unconditional love really represents unconditional potential. Because we must understand that love itself is a frequency, and that frequency does provide us with a gateway to the higher dimension of potential. And that's why when we're loving, anything is possible, literally, because we can feel it, we can connect to it. When we're not loving and we're angry and we're frustrated and we're sad, we feel everything so small. We feel like a little box, and inside the box we can see everything around us and we don't like anything. When we start to activate within love, literally, self-love is literally the place where we start. Because if we don't love the self, we'll never love anyone else unconditionally. It all starts with loving the self and learning to love oneself. truthfully, because as long as we can love oneself, we then have the ability to respect oneself. If we look outside of ourselves and never start with our own self-love, we're really building we may be able to build someone's structure above us, but we've never got strong ground. So eventually life could just blow us over, blow the existence over above us, just because we're not strong ourselves. And it's tough, and it gets tough here. But a lot of the time, that's why we need to start to understand that if we truthfully want to love someone unconditionally, we must learn to at least strengthen oneself. Doesn't need to mean we need to love ourselves 100%, but we just need to believe in ourselves and learn to love that we're doing the best for ourselves. And that's really what self-love is. When I'm talking about self-love, I don't mean I'm this perfect, loving self-image of I'm perfect and I can now love someone. I'm just talking about has some basic respect for oneself and just understands the potential of oneself and is doing their best to work towards loving themselves. And that effectively is all we need to really take that and then interconnect with someone else. Because what we'll find is that once we have that form of self-respect or doing the best for oneself, is that the universe will align us with someone. And it does this through interconnecting with a vibrational exchange of energy. And once we interconnect or unify within this vibrational exchange of energy, a choice is formed. And that choice is literally what we're talking is representing unconditional love. Because once that choice is formed, what we will see is that choice is formed. Everything from that moment is a choice. So we could give up on that choice. But the truth is, if you really boil back down to it, is that choice has stayed the same. It will always stay the same. And that choice is representing acceptance. So if someone comes into our life, we won't truthfully understand what unconditional love is until that person is taken away from us or is about to be taken away from us. And then because we can love someone, but we will never understand the true meaning of unconditional love until we understand that love is a choice. The love is a choice, and we don't need to love this person, but it's through our meaning that we want to love this person, because unconditional love represents unconditional acceptance. So a lot of the time we won't understand what unconditional love truthfully is until it's literally removed away from us. And then we understand that life will be literally nothing in between. It's either unconditional love or nothing. And that's the savage reality. A lot of us experience this, and it's pretty brutal. But the great thing is that as long as we can choose to accept, the love will never be taken away from us. And this is the reason why. This is where it gets really interesting. Is because love is love, right? Love is potential. But when we feel that potential is taken away from us, we experience heartbreak. So the interconnected frequency of potential, once we feel that that's severed. Now, what we must understand is that it's the perception that it's severed. As long as we can't accept and we go into the depths of devastation or the depths of ignorance of saying, this person did this person's not worthy of my love, la, 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 la. We just start to go into this deception that the field, the interconnected frequency has been destroyed. Now, it's the perception that it's been destroyed which convinces us that it has been destroyed. Because we must understand that the interconnecting field of energy, it's not just destroyed, it's forgotten about. And that's ultimately what's gone on. Because on a truthful scale, if two people have come together to connect in an entwining spiritual development, and I'm talking depth, not just little, the truth is depth, heart connection, not mind connection. Mind connection can be great, but it will never formulate true heart connection unless you truthfully activate the heart with one another. And for those who get to, or it doesn't need to be one another, it could be it could be a tree, for God's sake. But once we activate this heart connection, we will see that it's only perception of our minds which tell us that this heart connection is destroyed. Once the mind's perception grows stronger than the heart's perception, then the mind says, give up, cut it away. It's not good for us. And that's when we experience all the heartbreak, because there's so much force in between the heart's frequency, between the two existences, that once the mind gets in the middle of it, it's literally, it's quite messed up, because it's literally a feast. The frequency, the perception, the psyche of the mind is literally destroying that spiritual matter of love. And it's quite hard. It's very disgusting, actually, because this reality is ultimately built to construct this force and then designed to destroy it. And ultimately, what we will see is that people live their whole lives not being able to get over of the destruction of that force. Literally. And that is literally the representation of mainly why this existence, our reality, is taking place, is to feast or to fuel of that energetical frequency. That energetical frequency is extremely powerful frequency. It's we're representing love, and that love, once transformed into heart, that love is transformed effectively into a different frequency. Once the perception takes over, turns that frequency into, like, it's the best way that we can say it is that we give up on the love. Once we give up on the love, that's when we turn literally dark. We close off from the potential, and we turn into this dark frequency. And not necessarily it's all different layers. So some people may go very dark into depression. Some people may get over it quite quickly. But the thing is the people that get over it quite quickly, maybe they didn't grow that much depth of that existence. So maybe they didn't grow that deep in that vibrational existence. So it was quite easy for them to get over it. But the ones who really effectively can grow a lot of that frequency, it's not very easy to get over. It's actually very, 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 very hard. And this is when we're wrapping into unconditional love, is because what we will see is that energy can't be taken away from us. It literally can't. It's only the psyche or the perception that energy is being taken away from us. And this is where it gets really interesting and really powerful, is that energy or that psyche which is being taken away from us is effectively, we're being carried out by the psyche. And what's taking over our love, our frequency, is just the psyche. So the energy is never lost. It's only the perception that the energy is lost, which is now creating this psyche of negativity and frustration and anger and hatred. So we can always come back to accepting that person. And this is literally our great superpower, is that no matter how much someone's caused or what someone's done, that we should allow the psyche, allow our minds to convince us that that person isn't worth loving. The truth is that we don't need that person in our lives. If this person's not serving us, or they're just not meant to be in our lives in this moment, we don't need them in our lives. We don't need someone in our lives to love us. A lot of people, they think, oh, they're not in my life, I'm not gonna love them. Well, that's your choice. That's the choice of the psyche. But what we must understand is, and this is where it all links back to self-love and self-respect, is that life is trying to teach us something. It's trying to teach us the art of acceptance. And once we accept this person for the truth who they are, or accept this existence for the truth that they are, no matter what they've done, or no matter, we can actually start to comprehend how magical that existence was actually for the truth of it. How life interacted or brought us this person or brought us this experience for a truth. And although this truth may be experiencing hard times because of the manipulation of today's society with all the energetical imbalances and all the chemical imbalances and all the manipulation of structure, and this life isn't just easy like, oh, 1 and 1 is 2. It literally is manipulation. So we must look at people as people having an experience. And if we know that the love is true, but we know that the environment for that person to develop is hard, we can start to form a sense of compassion for people and stop being so hard on people. And it's that when we start to, I'm breaking this down, but naturally it just happens by feeling compassion and feeling acceptance, is that we can just accept that person for the truth which they are and allow that person space to develop. We don't need them to come into our lives and manipulate us again, or we don't need them to come into our lives to cause us destruction. But this is where we start to get close to what unconditional love truthfully is. It's because unconditional love is literally speaking unconditional acceptance. We may not even be with someone, but as long as we can unconditionally love them and accept them, effectively that opens a portal into our lives, which we can see what we've come here to do. When we can't see what we've come here to do, we may only see the perception of which is trying to torment our lives to convince us devastation, convince us anger, convince us frustration. And ultimately, that's why when we start to look at unconditional love or unconditional acceptance, it's literally unconditional happiness or unconditional spiritual development. Because we can see what the truth is of this reality. The reality which we're living in is trying to distract and destruct our potential. And it does this by convincing and tricking us into the psyche of deception. And a lot of the time it does this through hurt and anger and frustration. And a lot of the time the hurt, the anger and frustration is all seeded from not being able to accept. And the acceptance is only seeded from the psyche once again. So the psyche, this frequency of which isn't ourselves. You could say it could be a part of oneself, but when we're talking about the true self, the higher self, the psyche is more so the lower realms of potentially frequency, which may represent ourself, which needs to be accepted and learned. But it can also be other dimensional awareness, seeding a thought of frustration or anger. And to boil it down and to wrap it up, the best way to say, because we've very much spoken about a lot of things here, but unconditional love is effectively unifying within acceptance. It doesn't matter what that expression of existence is, which needs to be accepted, but as long as we can't accept someone, we will never be able to love that person unconditionally. We will never be able to love that existence unconditionally. And what do we get from loving someone unconditionally? We get self-contentment. Because that acceptance, which we're choosing to not love that person for, is always going to come back to haunt us. It will always come back to haunt us. Because we know within ourselves that if we were able to accept that, our existence would change. It would manifest into a being of unconditional acceptance, a being of unconditional love. The love is literally a frequency, and as long as we can accept, we continue to manifest and develop into a higher vibrating existence. And that is effectively unconditional love, is non-restrictive growth.